Those are the headlines at this hour. I'm Shereen Bhan and you're watching our budget brainstorm. Now, if the year 2020 was a hotel room, India's hospitality and tourism industry would have liked to check out as soon as possible. The COVID lockdown, the ban on flights and the reluctance in general to travel has left the sector battered and bruised. Even as business slowly starts to recover, the industry has already pegged a revenue loss of 90,000 crore rupees for the year. The sector is pinning its hopes on Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman and the upcoming budget to get back on the growth path. Industry bodies CII and FICCI in their pre-budget consultations have urged the government to include the tourism sector in the concurrent list to enable better regulation and policy decisions. They've also asked that the hotel sector be granted infrastructure status. This will allow them to avail electricity, water and land at industrial rates as well. So, to talk about the outlook for demand as well as the budget wish list, joining us now is Puneet Chhatwal, the Managing Director and CEO of Indian Hotels. He's also the Chairman of the CII National Committee on Tourism and Hospitality. Deep Kalra, the Founder and Group Executive Chairman of MakeMyTrip. He's also the co-chairman of the CII National Committee on Tourism and Hospitality. And also with us on the show, Jyotsna Suri, the chairperson and MD of the LaLiT Suri Group. She also serves as the chairperson of FICCI's Tourism Committee. Ms. Suri, Puneet and Deep, many thanks for joining us here on CNBC TV 18. Before I get to the budget wish list, let me wish all of you a very happy 2021. We certainly hope it's a better year across the board. But Puneet Chhatwal, let me start by asking you, what is the current prognosis as far as demand is concerned? The last 2 months, we did see some recovery for the sector. Do you expect this to hold? What kind of occupancy levels are we currently looking at?
Thank you for having us, Shereen, and a Happy New Year to you. The demand has to be looked at from two different perspectives. So when it comes to international inbound, it is at zero. And when it comes to domestic, the demand has been very strong, as you rightly said, in the months of November and December, and almost peaking in the last 10 days of December. Of course, January then starts, after 5th or 6th or 7th of January, the business slows down for the 7 or 8 days, and then it is expected to pick up. We are quite optimistic when it comes to domestic leisure, that it is going to see a continuous rise because we are coming from the levels of almost zero revenue from the months of April and May, starting with Vande Bharat and hosting medical staff in the months of June and July. Then the demand went on to 30% of the previous year, then to 50% of the last year at the same time. But there are destinations, and I'm sure my colleagues on the panel would agree, like Goa, like Uttarakhand, like Kurg, and many other such pockets where the demand levels are the same as the pre-COVID times, because these are leisure destinations, easy to drive to, where families have been taking vacations together. The homestay segment is doing quite well. However, and having said that, we are still far, far, far away from what was the pre-COVID level of business. And we definitely, as an industry, as a sector, we definitely need some form of help and support to get back on the feet and get to the same level of revenue, get to the same level of employment, get to the same level of taxes, get to the same level of happiness quotient, as I would like to call it, over the next few months.
Yes, we could all do with a lot more of the happiness quotient, Puneet Chhatwal. But, you said far, far away, almost in triplicate, expressing the kind of pain that the sector has gone through. And the expectation is that while leisure travel will hold up, you're not seeing any international travel. That continues to be zero at this point in time. And also, when we talk about business travel, that is yet to see any kind of a rebound as well. Jyotsna Suri, let me get you to first give us your prescription on where things currently stand for the sector. Do you also believe that perhaps we could start to see at least some degree of a rebound when it comes to business travel now that, the vaccination process, etc., will start as well?
Thank you, Shereen, and a Happy New Year to you as well. Shereen, it's the leisure travel which has actually picked up, and Puneet is very correct when he said that destinations like Goa were really good at the year end. But we have to wait and see how it pans out, say, after the 10th of January. As far as business is concerned, I see that to be a very far haul, Shireen, because uh, everyone's gotten so used to now doing their calls as video calls. There are restrictions on numbers of people that can actually gather. Delhi has only 50, some places have 100. So large mice movement or business travel seems to be quite far away. Yes, of course, the vaccine is something that we're all looking forward to because that would give a level of confidence to the travelers. But as things are today, leisure has picked up. I certainly agree with that. But business travel and large mice movement, which is where we really used to make our money from, that is a long haul as yet, Shireen.
And that's exactly what I wanted to discuss with you. So while business travel, you're saying, will take a long time before it starts to pick up, and you're right, people have gotten used to virtual meetings and so on and so forth, and even the process of vaccination will take time. And while that is a sentiment, Philip, at this point in time, it's not really a big lever. What's the impact as far as revenue is concerned and profitability? Because hotels are also being forced to hand out very hefty discounts to try and lure the traveler in, to try and lure the customer in.
You're absolutely right. We are all working on very, very heavy discounts. The business, if I can talk about my own group, we are functioning at about 80% of last year, minus 80% of last year. And that's where we stand currently. The movement of the leisure traveler, like I said earlier on, is happening, and the heavy discounting is definitely affecting our profitability. I mean, we are all going to be sitting at EBITDA negative for the next maybe 2 years. I don't know how. It'll take us at least, in my opinion, 3 to 4 years for us to begin to show a positivity in our EBITDA levels. So it is affecting us hugely. A lot of us are working well below the line that we should have drawn for ourselves. Is it bringing any traction? Yes and no. You do have some sporadic movement that comes in, but no, I'm not. It's not sustained business, and that's what we need. We need that sustained business to be able to show profitability.
Yes, and that is a concern at this point in time. Deep, what's the outlook? Domestic aviation has picked up and picked up quite well. Puneet was talking about drivecations, staycations, homestays, and so on and so forth. And these have opened up as new areas of opportunity that are seeing some traction. What's your pulse check at this point in time?
Shireen, definitely domestic leisure travel is coming back. And great to see it coming back. But I think you raised a very good point when you asked Jyotsna that, what is the discount or the pricing levels, where are they? And they have indeed gone below normal level to a scary degree, not just in hotels, probably hotels even more so, but also on the flight side. So the average ticket price, the average room rent is much lower. Great for the customer who's willing to be courageous and stake out and go and have a small trip or a long holiday, but not good at all for the industry. This industry, and I think CNBC and you particularly have really highlighted it, has been really walloped very badly through COVID for obvious reasons around the world. It's not just India. We have an opportunity now, as we see it come back, to help foster and nurture this industry. Yes, it's going to be domestic. I think through most of 2021, so we're going to really see domestic lead the way. Some international borders will open up. Even now, the few borders that are open up for Indians as tourists are seeing extraordinary demand. So whether it's Dubai or it's Maldives, we're seeing phenomenal demand. And more countries are looking to open up. But I think there's a great opportunity for India out here to rebuild its domestic business, to get back price levels which are healthy on both sides. And this can be done, I think, with also help from the government. And that's what we're really seeking as an industry to get that help. So you rightfully said we want to be on the concurrent list. Will that be immediate help? Maybe, maybe not. Hotels to get infrastructure status is huge. But more importantly, I think some direct benefits are required on the taxation side. I think it will be very helpful for the industry if we can address two segments. So, on the personal travel side, I personally believe that we need to have some sort of tax deduction, very similar to what we have with Section 80G or Section 80GA. You give a deduction for domestic travel that the individual is doing. LTC was there. Now LTC has actually been also used to cover FMCG. But more importantly, just focused on you make a domestic trip and you get a tax deduction. I think this for the next 2 years will really help in a big way, because for the average taxpayer, this is something like an incentive. Then you say, okay, this is a place where we are happy to spend our money and we get a tax deduction. And it's huge for the industry. And the entire industry gains. So the airlines gain if you're flying. Long distance bus could gain, hotels definitely gain, homestays gain, and tour operators gain, travel agents. So I think it's a very holistic measure. I'm hoping that this will find favor with the FM. In addition to that, we also think the MICE industry, which is meeting incentive, conferences, events, has been also hammered completely because it's corporate. That needs to come back. Many city hotels and even hotels in leisure cities depend heavily on MICE. In some cases, 25 to 30% of business comes from MICE. For that to come back, I think we also need an incentive to the MICE business. And the recommendation that CII has made is that we actually have a 200% weighted deduction to companies for the expenditure on MICE for the next year or two to come. So we think this will be really well received. We're not asking money today. We're asking for rebates as the business picks up over the next couple of years. So that's our recommendation.
Okay, so those are some of the asks that industry has put forward to the finance minister ahead of the union budget. Puneet, let me come back to you now. We don't know whether the government will be able to provide the kind of direct benefits that Deep was talking about on the direct tax side, trying to drive travel consumption in the consumer. But on the MICE side, this 200% weighted deduction that Deep was talking about, will that really find takers, even if the government were to go ahead and provide you with that relief? Will that make a difference given the fact that at this point in time, at least, as far as large corporations are concerned, MNCs are concerned, this is something that's totally off the table?
Yeah, I think both Deep and you are right in saying what you're saying, but I think you need to take a step back. And the step back is this industry went through a lockdown which was imposed on the industry. I think it would be fair to say that we should not be paying for a lot of statutory obligations like excise fees, like license fees, like other things. The MHA issues guidelines, the health ministry issues guidelines, WHO issues guidelines. Why can we not have certain guidelines in just calling a certain part of this financial year as a period of force majeure for certain industries? Even today, our pools, spas, etc. are shut. Our facilities we're not able to use, but you keep paying the same amount of property tax. You keep paying about the same amount of the lease payments. Although it's broadly acknowledged as a force majeure event. I think, and that deduction can come in the future years' obligations, so that the government, even if may find difficult to incentivize or to pay cash benefit, it could be deducted from future obligations. So it's a kind of a fair deal in which certain hope is provided. That's number one. Number two, I think. But
Puneet, I just want clarity from you. When you talk about waiving off statutory obligations, and this is something that I'm sure a lot of sectors will want the government to consider, but I don't know. I believe that time has perhaps passed. But, what kind of statutory obligations, what would be the quantum of things like property tax, etc., that hotels specifically have had to pay out?
I can give an example. Recently, the Maharashtra government at the state level gave a kindness package for hotels, around 200 hotels, which served the state and the city in hosting medical staff. So the property taxes for 3 months were waived off. Recently, an announcement was made that the excise fees up to 50% will be waived off, but could be deducted from next year's obligation. the escalation in excise fees will not take place for the next year. So there are ways to do things. Different states are doing different things at the state level. I think what center can help and do, and I would like to reinforce what Deep has said, is provide the infrastructure status, add this sector to the concurrent list of constitution. And it is important, and the time has come, and I've said it on your channel also a few months ago, that tourism as a sector is important for the globe. It has produced 10% of all jobs pre-COVID levels. It has contributed 10% to the GDP of the globe. In India, it was around 8 because we have this organized and unorganized sector, but the potential of tourism to grow is significant. And although international people are not coming in because of restrictions in travel, the 25 million visits that were happening from Indians going abroad are now going to be consumed within the domestic arena. And when you incentivize that, when you enable that people are able to travel more, then it creates more taxes, it creates more employment, and it creates more disposable income, which is in general good for a sustainable GDP growth for the nation.
No, the multiplier effect, the multiplier impact has been well known and well acknowledged. But Jyotsna Suri, let me ask you, to the point that was being made by Deep in terms of the kind of cash burn that the industry is faced with, different parts of the industry is faced with, to be able to just keep, to repair the balance sheet, to be able to keep operations going, what kind of funding requirements do you foresee for the sector? What's the assessment at FICCI? And, sector-wise, what is the quantum of people who've been able to access the restructuring scheme provided by the Reserve Bank?
So while the restructuring scheme is extremely welcome, Shereen, the parameters are so difficult to meet. The ratios are impossible to achieve. In fact, even in pre-COVID times, we couldn't have done that. And we're expected to actually reach in 2 years pre-COVID times, which is absolutely impossible. So the restructuring has become a really major issue. While it is a welcome move, but I don't see many people going to be able to actually take advantage of it. And it's imperative for us to have this, because this is what will provide that cash flow, what you're talking about, because we burned so much money. We are not in a position to be able to pay the dues to the banks. And the moratorium that was given to us, which was for 6 months, it finished in August, as you know. Now the restructuring can kick in all the way up till June, but the moratorium has already finished in August. So post-August, we are now in a quandary as to how do we actually manage to do those payouts to the banks. And if we don't do them, then we become NPAs. The moment you become an NPA, your credit rating is discounted, and thereafter which your interest levels go up. Yeah. So really our request has been to the RBI as well as to the Finance Ministry that they need to review this entire restructuring aspect for us. We need a minimum of 4 years, So the window has to be extended till 2024. And the moratorium that finished in August needs to be extended till March, Shereen. Otherwise, starting now, there will already be people who are getting to the verge of being NPAs. So really the entire thought process behind the restructuring, which is to help the industry, is going to get completely lost. So the request,
so you're saying that,
sorry.
Right. No, so you're essentially saying that there needs to be changes to the restructuring scheme specifically for sectors like yours, and there needs to be more time given to sectors like yours to be able to comply with the obligations. Let me get wrap-up comments from each of you. And Deep, let me start by asking you, as Puneet was saying, this is an industry that is a large employer. We did see many people being laid off, salary reductions, etc. And then we saw some degree of a reversal on that front. What's the outlook that you're hearing at CII on the tourism committee in terms of hiring, in terms of salary cuts or restoration of salaries, etc.?
I'm glad you brought that up, Shereen. In fact, that is the gravest outcome of COVID on the industry. Our estimate is that anywhere around 35% of jobs have been lost. A lot of these jobs are not with large companies. Travel and tourism as a sector, particularly tourism, is highly fragmented. You know, we think of large hotel chains and we think of large companies, but actually there are many, many small companies that make up the ecosystem. A lot of them are single operators. Very often you have guides in far-flung parts of the country who haven't seen any business. I was in Kashmir last week over New Year's, and I can tell you everyone that I spoke to was saying, since lockdown, we've had no earning. And these are people who are up on the slopes in Gulmarg. They were so excited to see tourists come back. These are shikaras in Dal Lake saying we've seen no business. So these people are not going to survive. They're going to do something else. So that employment is probably only which is on record. If you were to look at the overall sector and its kind of tertiary impact, it might even be close to 50%. How do we get them back? And that's why I've been actually imploring for some kind of incentives to come back to ensure that domestic tourism comes back. And that should be our focus for the year ahead. Because otherwise, you know, when international borders open up, a lot of people who can afford to travel overseas will travel overseas. However, it's a great opportunity for them to see different parts of the country. Employment has been completely ravaged. The outcome is things might come back a bit by about 10 percentage points, but I think we'll still end up the year with at least 25% of jobs lost. And that's tremendous for such a large employer. And I think we must take this very seriously.
Absolutely. Puneet, you know, to the point that you made about various state governments putting together their own set of incentives, do you believe that that is going to be really the, the lever, so to speak, to try and revive sentiment and revive demand? Because the centre has many obligations and many pulls and pressures to contend with at this point in time. So more measures like what the state of Maharashtra has announced to try and provide a fillip to demand, is that what you would then place your bets on? More kindness packages from more state governments?
Absolutely, that's most welcome from the state governments. You know, the state of the industry is such, it does not matter where the package comes from. We'll be very happy and thankful as an industry from wherever it comes. However, I do believe, and as the Honorable Prime Minister has made it clear in his speech on the Independence Day, going to certain destinations within India should be done by the Indians going forward in the remaining 12 months of this year. Whatever we want to call it, Dekho Apna Desh, or incentivizing travel, it is very, very important, not just for the revival of the sector, but as I've said repeatedly, it is very important to build the character of a nation. That's why we have those terminology. We say that this person is very well traveled. What does that mean, is very well traveled? It's very well traveled because he's been exposed to different cultures and he's become more tolerant, more open, and more progressive. So I think we should look at this as an opportunity, like any crisis is. This is an opportunity to reposition tourism and reposition India on the global map as a tourist destination.
Absolutely, and that is something that we must focus on. Jyotsna Suri, I'll give you the final say. I'm going to ask you to put on your former FICCI president hat because you know what the budget consultation process is like. Every sector sends in a long laundry list of demands. Let's be realistic. Given where we see the economy, given the fiscal balancing act that the government must do, how confident do you feel that some of the wish list that you've shared with us today will probably be taken forward?
Shereen, I don't envy the finance minister at all. She's got an ominous job ahead of her, considering that the year has been what it has been. She has to do a huge balancing act. And as a matter of fact, I have a different take on the budget. A budget is really an accounting exercise, and our industry doesn't need that. What we need are policy changes. And those decisions come with or without the budget. We put out a long laundry list as we do every year. And some of the key issues that we've highlighted, which on your program right now, are actually the focus of what we've been asking for. And if these measures get introduced, whether with the budget or over the period of the next couple of months, they're welcome for us. And as Puneet said, that it is, whether it comes from the center or whether it comes from the state, it's welcome for us. And as Deep said, and I completely agree with both my colleagues on the panel, that it is domestic tourism. And domestic tourism is what we have to focus on. It has to be incentivized. It has to be made easier. So all the states need to now make it easy for people to travel from one state to the other. And on several webinars, we have requested, and we've had webinars with chief ministers of various states, requesting them to make it easy to travel from one state to the other. So a synergy between the states is a must. And domestic tourism is the way forward. Like I said, the budget, of course, for me is like an accounting exercise, but we are very hopeful that the finance ministry and others, policymakers, are hearing us, and they will give us some sort of a respite going forward.
Well, let's hope that the finance minister is listening in to the three of you on the budget brainstorm. And as you pointed out, a lot of what you are suggesting is not necessarily the remit of the budget. It can be done outside of the budget as well, because many of the demands are part of policy decisions that the government can take. And of course, some support needed on the fiscal side, as Deep was pointing out, to try and spur domestic consumption. Deep, Kalra, Puneet, Chhatwal, Jyotsna Suri, always a pleasure. Many thanks for joining us here today on the budget brainstorm. We'll, of course, check back in with you on the 1st of February when the finance minister delivers the union budget. We will wrap things up here. Stay tuned to CNBC TV 18. The news will continue.